It is a delight to be back here. Man, it's just like coming home when I get here. It just really is. When the closer I get, the more excited I get, and my heart rate increases. And oh, I wish we had the time we could sit down and I could just go through a truckload of memories, some good, some bad, some unbelievable. Many of them I probably shouldn't even remember or let you clue you in on, but it's good to be back here. And someone said, well, man, did you drive up again? I said, yeah, I did. It's only about 800 miles a day, and did it in 2 days, and I enjoyed that. But you think I'm crazy. My wife's crazier than I am. She had today off because they built in a couple of bad weather days. They don't have snow days in South Texas. They have bad weather days, and so in case there's hurricane activity in this, and this was one of them, and they hadn't used it, so they got it off. And so Maria and I drove up, and Beth said, you know what? She said, I don't have to go to school Monday if I can find a decent ticket. And so she jumped in the car and drove up with us. We got here about 8 o'clock last night. Kent and Janan came over to our room, and we partied for a couple of hours. That's why I'm a little hungover this morning. But and Beth left the room at 4:45 this morning to head to the Greater Cincinnati Airport, and is already back in South Texas at our home. So she's been on a marathon especially. So, but going home was a lot faster than coming up here. Well, it's a delight to be here to be able to speak with you today. I need you to pray for me, because on the trip yesterday, God changed my message for today. And I don't know why, but I feel like this is what I need to use for today, because there's someone here, and Mr. President, I'm sorry it doesn't fit necessarily with the theme, other than the fact that I'm trying to hear God in this busy world, and sometimes He changes things up. So I'm gonna use something entirely different, and I'm going to talk to you, with the Lord's help, about 4 principles for successful Christian living. All right? Now, one of the most fun times working that I've ever had was right here in the Cincinnati area. And it was, I don't even want to think how many years ago. It was almost 30 years ago. And actually, it was over 30 years ago. And I was a driver's ed teacher here in Cincinnati. And I did that for almost 3 years, and I loved it. That's why I'm gray-headed. It's a thrill a minute. And the 4 points I want to use today are basically 4 points of a defensive driving course that you use to avoid accidents, to get there safely, to arrive where you hope to arrive. And but they transfer very, very easily over into the spiritual life. And last year I was preaching the school revival at Hope Sound, and I used this down there. And Brother David Fuller came up to me afterwards, and he said, I do commercial driving for a living, and we go through that basic plan regularly. There is one other point, and I left it off because this is the 4 things that I felt like the Lord wanted me to use. So let me give you an outline quickly and some scripture to go with it, and then we will head into it. First of all, if you're going to be successful in your Christian life, number 1, you have to aim high. You have to aim high. All right, the scripture for that one is Colossians chapter 3, verse 2. Set your affections on things above, not on the things of the earth. You have to aim high. Point number 2, you have to get the big picture. All right? There's more going on in this world than what is confined to your world. And the devil wants to focus you on your world and your problems and what you're struggling with and make you feel like you're the only person ever that has faced that. And it's just not so. There's a much bigger picture, and we need to see that. And the scripture from that comes from 1 Kings chapter 19. That's the story of the prophet who had just called down fire on the top of the mountain, and now he's running for his life from the wicked queen, and he runs and he hides in a cave, and God says, "What in the world are you doing here?" He said, "Oh, just let me die. Just take my life away." He was having a pity party at that point, and you will somewhere along the line, and yes, I have too. And all your other teachers and administrators have too. All right? That's a part of life. But the contrast that we see there is between man's point of view, and he said, "Lord, I have been jealous for you, and now they're out to kill me, and I'm the only one left. Just don't let me die at the hands of some wicked queen. Just kill me and take me to heaven." But then there's God's point of view. And God said, "Listen, son, I have 7,000 in Israel alone that have not bowed their knees." Young person, you need to understand, though the devil has done everything he can to make you feel like you're the only one that struggles with this problem and the only one in the middle of a dark tunnel, there's a host of other people around you that have experienced the same thing. And a good majority of those have come through victorious. So you have to get the big picture. The third point is you have to keep your eyes moving, so you know what's happening around you. And there's lots of verses we could use there. 2 Timothy 4:5 says, "Watch thou in all things." 1 Corinthians 16:13 says, "Watch ye and stand fast, and fight like men, and be strong." Mark 14:38, "Watch ye and pray, lest ye enter into temptation." You know, in my point of view, the reason a lot of young people stumble and fall is they're ignoring this admonition. And they're caught unawares. They're caught with their guard down. It blindsides them, and by the time they pick up the pieces, they have stumbled and fallen and disappointed themselves and God and everyone else. And then the devil says, "You might as well just quit. You've been here before." You watch and pray lest ye enter in temptation. I also like the scripture from Nehemiah where they worked with one hand and they watched and they had a sword in the other, so they're ready for anything at any time. And that's how we need to be if we as high school, no, it's just college today, right? So as college people, if you're going to be victorious, you're going to have to practice that. And the fourth point is leave yourself an out. Always have some way to escape, some place to go. And the text there is 1 Corinthians 10:13. "I will with the temptation make a way for you to escape it, that ye may be able to bear it." God's on your side in this, and he's helping you with that. Let's look at him a little bit together, all right? First of all, he says we need to aim high. Teaching driver's ed, especially in a big city, is very unique. And I went through what they called combat training. And the guy that taught me was a stunt driver. And he is over the instruction of all state highway patrol, or it was at that time, over all state highway patrol for the state of Ohio. His name was Art. And he took me through combat training. We lined a bunch of cones up down through the middle of a parking lot, and he pulled up right there beside one of them, and we were talking, and next thing I knew, he floored it and going wide open. He never touched the brake. He just started whipping back and forth in between all of those till he got clear to the end. I think there was like 12 or 15 cones, and right at the end, he slammed on his brakes and stopped. He said, "Get out." He said, "My bumper is exactly even with that cone." I got out and checked it, and it was. And I'm like, "Man, cool, how'd you do it? You going to teach me to do that?" And we talked a little bit, and then without warning, I didn't even realize he had put it in reverse, and suddenly he had, and the next thing I knew, we were going backwards full speed. And he's just boom, 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 just whipping between them, never touched a one of them. We come sliding to a stop with a front bumper right even with the first cone that we started, but on the other side. And I'm like, man. He took me out and he said, now are you ready? He said, this is your combat day. You ready to teach people? I said, yeah. He said, are you ready for anything? We were in a cul-de-sac of a new building, a new community. And the streets were all in, and the big circle where you turn around down there at the end, and the sidewalks are in, and a lot of the houses were under construction back a ways away. And he said, are you ready for anything? And I said, yep, I'm ready. And suddenly he floored it, and the next thing I knew, we went sailing up over the curb and across the sidewalk and dodged between a telephone pole and a mailbox, and I'm grabbing on him. Man, what is wrong with you? Are you crazy? He said, you said you were ready for anything. I said, yeah, but I'm teaching you to drive. He said, well, what do you think I was doing? He said, I just wasn't driving on the road. And I said, does that really happen? He said, oh, worse than that happens. I said, oh, goody, let's go. No, I said, oh, man, I'm not sure I want to do this after all. One of the points you'll understand about in learning to drive is where you look is going to control where you end up. And you see a new driver, and they're sitting there, and they got the classic 10 and 2 position, and they're real studious, and they're gripping that, and they're just staring straight ahead. But what happens is people are different. Some of them are afraid they're going to hit the parked cars. So they don't want to do that. So they're over here next to this line. And what they do is they stare right at that center line. And so they're driving, staring at that center line. But somewhere, the connection between our hands and our minds, when we stare at that line, we automatically drive over it until our wheel is running right on that line. And so I'm sitting over here teaching you to drive, and I'm thinking, oh, get away from that line. Yeah, but I don't want to hit the parked cars. There are others of you that'll be afraid of this oncoming traffic, and so you're over here, so you're looking at the line on this side, and sure enough, as you look at it, you steer right toward it, and you just stay right on that line. You're just looking right at it. The problem is you're looking down and you can't see anything that's going on or anything that's happening around you. If you're going to stay in the middle of your lane, you know how to do it. Forget the lines. You need to get your eyes up and look as far down the lane as you can, right in the middle, and your car will automatically line up and do a perfectly straight line as long as you stay focused. And you will never deviate from that straight line. It happens automatically. It is a part of nature. I had a girl by the name of Heidi that was one of my students. She was the only person that I felt would never, ever learn to drive. The only student I taught. Her problem was a reaction time. It took her forever to respond to anything. And I had worked with her, I think I had had 40-some in-car hours, which was way more than normal. Normally I had about 16. And I had been teaching her, and her parents they so wanted her to learn to drive, but she just didn't. So I took her out up off of, 75 North, Stetler Road exit, 275 over by Sharon Woods. And there, that's a park. I think some of you have probably been to it, and they have a big open concept and just gently twisting roads, big wide. I think the speed limit is 5 miles an hour or 10 miles an hour. There's grass all around, and there was this one place where it just had just a real gentle curve like this. If you just turn your steering wheel 2 or 3 degrees and just held it there, you would just go right in there automatically. And there was a big parking lot over here with nobody in it. So I said, I've got to find out exactly how long it takes Heidi to respond. So I got her there on that street, and because we did the maneuverability or the parallel parking in the examination, we set the idle of the little cars that we used we set it up high until they could just let off the brake. They didn't have to touch the gas. and it would just pull itself through there. So I told her, I said, okay, Heidi, you see this gentle curve? Out here is this big field, and over here is a soccer field, and over there is a baseball diamond. There's this big curve in this big parking lot. All I want you to do is stay on the pavement, go around there, find 2 lines, and park between them. Any 2 that you want, just park between those 2 lines. You think you can do that? She said, yeah, I can do that. So I said, okay. I said, now I'm not going to help you at all. Actually, I had a stopwatch in my hand. And so I sit back, and got my arms folded. I'm in a little Chevette. Chevy Chevette has 2 steering wheels, 2 brakes. Mine's on a chain that can just override anything, as well as my steering wheel, so I can take the wheel out of their hands. I don't have a gas pedal. But so we're going around there, and I'm sitting back, and I said, okay. So there was a little broken line down the middle. We started where we were supposed to. And as we started around, I saw her begin to drift. And so I hit the start of my stopwatch, and I'm watching it. And we slowly drifted toward that center line, and we drifted a little more and a little more. And before long, we're riding on top of it. And I'm looking at my stopwatch, no indication that she's even aware of it. And we go, and suddenly we're straddled that middle line, and then before long we're over on the other side of the road, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, wow, this is worse than I thought. And we just keep going in the road. I mean, it's just the gentlest little curve. And she keeps going, and suddenly we start into the grass, and I'm like, oh my word, I don't think this is going to work. And then both front wheels were in the grass, and then we got over, and one of the back wheels was in the grass, and she's still driving, just staring right at the end of the hood. Doesn't have any clue what's going on here, and I'm thinking, does she think she's on the road? Pretty soon the whole car is out in the middle of the field, and we're bumping along out over this field, and by this time I'm enjoying it. I'm thinking, man, I don't have a thing to worry about. I'm sitting back grinning, and she just keeps going. I look at my watch, and we keep going, and we're 50 yards out in the middle of a field. We're actually in left field for the ball diamond. And finally I put on the brakes. And I look over at her and sort of grin. And I said, Heidi, what happened? And she's sitting there, still looking straight off the end of the hood. And she starts going, and she looked at me. She said, I think I missed my turn. I said, I agree. I think so. I took her home, and she never learned to drive. What was her problem? She wasn't aiming high enough. Young people, can I tell you something straight from my heart? If you don't aim any higher than Hollywood, or a good job, or a pretty face, or position, you're going to crash and burn. You're going to end up in left field. And the reason you ended up in left field was you weren't aiming high enough. You weren't looking at the things that are really important. The Bible says, if you gain the world and lose your soul, what did it profit you? I had an uncle, my mom's oldest brother. He started off a beggar. I mean, they were so poor. And he said, I'm going to make it in this world until everyone knows who William Lamb is. And they found it out. He had millions. He could buy anything he wanted. He could do anything he wanted. And he's one of the most miserable men I've ever met. The problem was he aimed too low. And he hit his mark and got exactly what he was after. And but for the grace of God would have lost his own soul. Young people, you're going to have to aim higher than this world. And they're going to put up pretty pictures and exciting lights and adrenaline rushes and thrills and all of this thing that they say, but they never go behind the scene and see the broken and the twisted and the hurting. As a pastor, I've been there. I've held them in my arms as they died. I've heard them scream, "Oh, hold me. Keep me it's so hot." They had this lady named Sandy had 2 fans burning on her, blowing on her. She said, "It's so hot." She said, "I can feel the fire. I can feel the flames. Help me. Hold me." And I crawled up in that hospital bed and wrapped Sandy in my arms. She was a big lady and not very well dressed in the hospital, of course. But we were talking about eternity. She said, "Help me, hold me, please." And I was able to help her to understand that the grace of God releases the chains that bind us. I went out later. We prayed. Sandy confessed her sins, and she went to sleep just like that. And I went out and talked to the lady that was watching the monitors, and she said, "I can tell you the exact second when God heard her prayer, because all of this motion on these machines just went out and went to a normal process." But Sandy's problem was, she said, "I wanted so many things, and I just went after them like my life depended on them, and I got them all. And nothing was satisfying." You got to aim high if you're going to be spiritually victorious. Excuse me. The second thing is you've got to get the big picture. I'm sure that most of you, if not all of you, just in the course of this school year, have had highs and lows and those points of depression where you just feel like you're all alone and you can't take it anymore, and I just need to cut and run. I need to go back home. I need to get out of this. And you know what's behind the scene is the devil feeding every one of those thoughts and every one of those plans. If you could just go home, you'd have the same problems at home that you have here. The scenery would be different, but it's going to be exactly the same. And the one behind the scenes still feeding you the same line. You have to get the big picture. Now, as we lift our eyes to God and we lift our eyes to the hills from whence come our help, and as we lift our hearts in prayer to God, then suddenly we begin to notice all this that is happening in between. And you think, wow, they're going through the same thing I am. They had that same problem. They fell over the same stumbling block that I did. But they got back up and they're going on. Young people, you need to understand that the devil is out for your soul. And he is going to feed you any lie that you'll swallow. And if it works, he'll feed you a full diet until he'll just keep you so defeated and so introspective and all that till you can never get up, never get your head up and see out there what God wants you to see. You've got to get the big picture. I taught a girl by the name of Janine Smeets. She was from Holland, and her dad was the president of a buyers club up on North 75, up by the GE plant. And in Holland, because they drive on the Autobahn, they have to take 4 solid years of driver's training before they can get their license. She had already had 3. Then they moved to the United States. She knew more about driving than I did. And yet she had to come to my driver's ed class and learn. And she was bored stiff. She was a good driver. A careful driver. But she was just absolutely bored, and so I took her out, and what I love to do on their last driving lesson with me, I'd take them downtown Cincinnati at the worst possible time of day. I would take them at the peak of rush hour, and I'd do the really good drivers. I'd do all kinds of fun things. Like it'd be one way coming up this way, and I'd say, okay, get in your left lane. At the next street, I want you to turn left. And they'd get over there and get up there and get ready to turn left. And I'm thinking, surely you're not going to really do it. They got to sign this big says, one way going that direction. And they say, oh, sir, you told me to turn left. That's one way. I said, good. That's what I wanted you to see that. Well, we could have got killed. I said, no, I'm not. I would have got killed too. I'm not going to do that. I need to make sure that you're getting the big picture. You don't turn left on a one-way street that's going right. And I'd do all kinds of things, and I'd stop them in the middle of traffic, and I said, you need to back up and go down that alley, right down there off Ray Street and back in behind the Centennial Hotel. She said, in this traffic? I said, well, that's where you need to go. Well, I don't think we can do it in this. I said, well, what would you suggest? Well, let's go around the block. I said, exactly. You got the right answer. First try. But you see, she had to get the big picture. Well, Janine was so convinced that she was such a good driver, she wouldn't listen to anything I said. She knew how to do it. She was in her own little world, so she was going down like this, and she was a good driver, right in lane. She would turn her turn signal on to change. She would give plenty of distance. She would stop when she was supposed to, turn when she was supposed to, do all the things right, but she was zoned out in another world. I had her downtown coming down. We were coming off the street from Fountain Square. I don't know, that's about 5th Street, something like that. We went down, we were going to turn left on Race, which was one way going down to the river. And I said, okay, Janine, turn left at this next light. So she turned left. Soon as we turned left, clear down at the end of the block, I saw this old lady that was starting out in the road, crossing the street with a walker. So as I turned the corner, I said, Janine, you see that old lady? Yeah, I got it. Everything's fine. I said, okay. So I sat back, and she starts down Race. And I look over at her, and she is in her own world. She's not paying attention, staying in her lane, doing everything right, but she doesn't have a clue what's taking place around her. And we get farther, and I said, Janine, did you see that old lady? Yeah, I got it. Okay. And we get a little farther, and now we're half a block away, and this lady's right out in the middle of our lane. I said, Janine, there's an old lady. Yeah, I got it. Okay. A little bit farther. And I realized I wasn't getting through to her. And then I made a really grave mistake. I let her go too far. And suddenly I realized we're going to hit that lady. I mean, we're just going to wipe her out. And I said, Janine, did you? And that's all I got. And suddenly she realized it. And she set up, the lights came on, the eyes came open, all the cobwebs cleared, her eyes are about this big around, and she just slammed on the brakes. And the only problem was she hit the gas instead of the brake. She didn't get the big picture. She was in her own world. She didn't see what was going on around her. The third point. Sorry. I know. Obviously, guys, it didn't kill her, I wouldn't be here. After we changed her diapers and cleaned up the mess. No, I grabbed that steering wheel and stood up with both feet on my brake. I was completely elevated off that seat. And I think I put scratches in the front bumper of that Chevette. We came down. The thing about it was the streets were just thronging with people. And when they realized there was a drama going on, all of them were sitting there going. And when she floored it 10 feet away, they went. It was set up till it just killed that engine. And we stopped probably about 2.5 feet from that lady. And buddy, I was dripping. I was sweating it. That lady never looked up. She wasn't getting the big picture. She didn't have a clue that anyone else was in the world besides her. Thank the Lord. Otherwise, we wouldn't have had to run over. She would have died of a heart attack. Oh, Janine was in tears. She was just shaking. She was bawling. I got to get out of here. You got to drive. I said, no, I'm not driving. I said, this is your problem. You got us in here. You're getting us out. And she said, no, I can't do it. I'm going to call the office. I said, you go ahead. But you're driving us out of here. I said, you needed to learn a lesson, and you did. Now, what are you going to do with it? All right, you got to get the big picture, young people. There are a whole bunch of people that crashed and burned and went out into oblivion because the only thing they were concerned with was the here and now and what was going on right then, and they thought they had it made. Oh, God help us. God help us. God help you young people. You got to get your eyes up. Now, the devil will say you're the only one in it, and that negativity will destroy you as quick as anything. You'll feel sorry for yourself and give up. But then sometimes we are so convinced that we have it all under control that we blindly destroy our world before we even realize that we need help from a higher power. You got to get the big picture. You got to keep your eyes moving. That's point 3. I just came off a 1,500-mile trip. A lot of that was in real intense rainstorms, fog so thick that you couldn't hardly see 10 feet ahead of you. And you got to know what's going on. You got to know where the other person is. There were times when I got off the road and someone stopped halfway up in my driver's door. And the only reason we didn't have an accident was I was watching them because they weren't watching me. I got out of their way. I avoided an accident. All right? And you got to keep your eyes moving. The fact that I'm born again and that my heart has been cleansed and the Spirit of God dwells in me and I'm in the middle of trying to train to do what God wants me to do, that doesn't mean that you have arrived and that you sit back and hit autopilot and go get a cup of coffee while you're going down the road. You've got to be aware. You've got to keep your eyes moving. Why? The Bible says, watch and pray lest ye enter into temptation. There are some times where the devil jumps out in front of you with one of his helpers and just throws it right out there so you can see it, and you know right straight up that it's a temptation that you don't want to have anything to do with. But more often than not, he's coming in the back door and he's just doing a little something here and setting a little tripwire there and putting a little something here and just a little thing just to nudge you in the right direction. And if you're not looking, you'll fall right over the edge and wake up broken and destroyed and disgusted with yourself. I did it again. And the only reason was you weren't watching where you were going. You weren't looking. You weren't keeping your eyes involved and looking around and seeing the things. You know what? God has loaded your way with benefits. The psalmist says that. He loadeth our paths with benefits until our paths drop fatness, it says. And you miss a lot of the little blessings along the way simply because you weren't looking. You weren't paying attention. And the devil comes and he's tempting you and you fall. And you could have avoided it. I mean, just a little sidestep diverted that and it just sloughed off like it wasn't even there. And you keep walking a victorious Christian walk. I'm talking about how can I be victorious on a day-by-day basis and make it to heaven. I had the opportunity to teach a whole family of students from Japan. There was 4 of them. The oldest one, his name was Rong Tan. They gave him the U.S. name of William. And he knew about 5 or 6 words of English. Yes, sir. No, sir. Thank you, sir. That's about it. How do you teach a person to drive but can't talk your language? Let me ask you another question. How do you draw pictures in Japanese? I didn't know how. I'm trying to tell him that he needs, I finally got to the idea that he needed to stop. But I'm trying to draw a picture to show that he needed to slow down before he stopped. I mean, you don't come up here and just, stop. Yeah, there's a process. You try to get, the goal is stop without any backward and forward movement of the car till it just settles in and stops. That's a good driver. I bet you a bunch of you can't do it. Set up a camera out here and watch them try, all right? I was trying to draw pictures, and I'd say, you got that, William? Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. He didn't have a clue what I was saying. He was lying. That's the only response he knew. We were cross-culturally communicating right then. We weren't saying the same things, and they weren't connected at all, but I was trying and he was trying. Well, he had a friend that over here in Coralville, It's torn down now. It's over by there, but it's over close to where the La Rosa's Pizza is over there. And he owned a restaurant. And he was Japanese as well. And so I would take William there, and William would go in, and I would go in and talk to Paul. They always gave me something to eat, and gave me in one of those little white boxes with a little crown top and a little wire handle to take with me back home. Someone wants to talk to me, but I don't want to talk to them. That's far, Texas. And I would go in and talk to Paul and tell him all the things I was working with, and he would explain them to William. Now, William was one of 12 people that lived in an efficiency apartment building. They would buy 100-pound sacks of rice and some fresh vegetables and that kind of stuff, and 6 of them worked from noon till midnight, and the others slept. And then those guys would come home, and the others worked from midnight to noon. And so there was only 6 of them there at any given time, but there was 12 of them that shared that apartment. And William was making good money working in the restaurants, and he didn't have anything to spend it on, so he got excited when he was getting his driver's license. And he went out and bought him a Chrysler Diplomat car, a used one, but it was a nice-looking car. Now the problem was, he had this permit, and in his mind, that let him do whatever he wanted to. So he bought that car, and then he would take it out driving. He'd drive all over Cincinnati, and he couldn't drive. He didn't know the rules. He didn't know whichever way. If there was someone in front of him in this lane, he'd drive in the other lane. And I got a call like 10 o'clock at night, and Paul said, it was snowing like crazy. We had about 6 or 7 inches of snow, and Paul called me and said, oh, Steve, he said, we got problems. I said, what? He said, William's been out driving his car. I said, what? He can't drive. He said, I know, but he doesn't. And I told him, and he said, no, I have license. And I said, no, you don't have license. You have a piece of paper with name on it. Nothing more. But he said, he just came in, and I got to talking to him, and he said, I hit 4 cars. And I said, Paul, no. He said, yes, he hit 4 cars. I said, what did he do? He back up and go on. I said, we got problem. I said, Paul, you've got to take William's keys. Hide that car. And William can't touch that car until he's got his driver's license. And then I put him in contact with a police captain that I knew, and they worked out the details. But so Paul would help him and explain some things to him. And so we were making progress, and he was doing pretty good. And I took him out to Alt Park. And we drove around. Those are nice, big open parks and not a lot of traffic during the day. And we're driving around there, and I'd have him pull in and then back out, and then pull in the other side and back out. And I would have him come the other direction and back in and then pull out and all this kind of stuff. And we were working on things and doing pretty good. One of his problems was he would just blow stop signs. I mean, he would just go right through them if I didn't stop him. So finally, I drew a picture and went out and stopped, and we went over and laid hands on touching that stop sign. And I said, every time you see one of these stop signs, you've got to stop. If you don't, they'll write you a ticket. Big money, big money. No, you got to stop. Okay, see, thank you, sir. Yes, sir. So we were making progress. And every time he'd see a stop sign, he'd slow down and stop, and he'd look at me and grin. I'd say, yes. He said, thank you, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. So we were leaving Alt Park, and we were coming down, Observatory, I think it is. Big, wide, 2 or 3 lanes going in each direction, place to park on either side. We're coming down there, and he's doing pretty good, and I was beginning to relax, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to let him drive on out of here a ways. He's getting to where he needs to get out on the streets, and we play bumper cars, He'd already done that on his own, but I wanted to be with him this time. So we're going along, and I was beginning to relax, and we came around this curve, and there was a street coming in from the side like this, and there wasn't anyone coming, so that's fine. I looked up, there was a Jaguar right behind us. And that's a car, not an animal. She looked like she thought we were ready to be attacked. That came later, okay? So Jaguar right behind us, and we walk along, and I'm relaxed, and he's doing good, and I was feeling good. Yeah, we've got over the hump here, and next thing I know, I mean, he just locked him up. I mean, we went sideways, and I'm looking around, and the guy in the Jaguar behind me, he turned animal then. And he kept waving at me, but only using one finger. And he said all kinds of things I couldn't really understand, but I don't think he was complimenting my mother or anyone else I knew. I mean, and he went out around the other way, and I turned and I said, William, what are you doing? He looked at me and said, yes, sir. Thank you. No, William, what are you doing? And he pointed over at this street that's coming in the side, and there was a stop sign turned about half sideways because it was for that street. And he looked over at me, had this big grin on his face. He said, Estapa! I said, no, Estapa! Go! His eyes were moving too much. He saw too many things. So I had to put blinders on that one side, and then he couldn't see anymore. No. Guys, you got to aim high. You got to get the big picture. You got to keep your eyes moving, and it's time for me to quit. The last one. Leave yourself an out. I have driven hundreds of thousands of miles. In the last 10 years, I put somewhere around 140,000 miles on my vehicle in Mexico, which plays by different rules in the United States. Been all over. And there have been literally dozens of accidents that I have been able to avoid because I left myself an out. What am I going to do if something goes wrong? I can go this way. I don't get up to where it's all bunched up because I need room to get out of here if something happens in front of me. All different kinds of things. Leave yourself an out. Now hear me. Hear me, young people. You can't put yourself intentionally in a place that you know is going to be loaded with temptation and expect God to bring you out unscathed. You can't do that. There's some aisles I don't walk down. There's some shops I don't go in. There's some friends I won't answer the phone or return the text. You understand what I'm saying? Why? Because I'm leaving myself an out. I know if I walk down that magazine aisle, there's going to be something that the devil's going to try to use to catch my attention. And I know if I go in that shop, there are things in that shop that I shouldn't. And I know if I go out just for a pizza with that person before the night's over, we're going to end up in places, at least in our conversation and thought life, that we shouldn't be. Listen to me, young person. You cannot put yourself in the way of temptation and then expect God to come to your rescue and get you out unscathed. There are times when God in His mercy may choose to work in an unusual way. But when you place yourself in direct content on purpose and by choice with temptation, there's always heartache that follows. Always. But you don't have to. God said, in every temptation, I put a back door. And when you think you're going under, look for that door because it's an escape route. You got to leave yourself an out. Aim high. Get your eyes above this world. You'll crash and burn just like everyone else. You got to get the big picture. It's bigger than you, both good and bad. The devil can't beat you with that. When you just say, no, that person's going through it, that person's going through it, that person's going through it. They've been victorious. I can be victorious as well. You got to know what's going on around you to avoid temptation, but also to take advantage of the positive, the opportunities of grace. And always leave yourself an out. God's on your side. He will help you get out. But you can't put yourself there on purpose. God bless you.
We're glad you joined us. God's Bible School and College prepares students for lives of ministry wherever God calls them. This content is possible because of the generous support of friends like you. To support GBSC, visit giving.gbs.edu. Thank you.